Welcome to today's deep dive. And before we even get into the timeline and the music today, I have to let you in on something I was working on right before we sat down.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Well, I was actually trying to write out an Apple Podcast title and description for today's session.
Okay, getting a head start on the marketing.
Mostly as an exercise, honestly, to see if I could summarize the sheer scale of what we were about to discuss. I wanted to weave in all those heavy-hitting SEO keywords, to make sure this reaches the right audience.
Right, right.
So I came up with a title, something like The Secret Architect of 21st Century Rock, Uncovering the Genius of Jack Lawrence.
Ooh, I like that. It definitely has a cinematic flair to it.
Almost like a movie trailer, right? And for the description, I wrote, dive into the interconnected web of garage rock, alternative music, and country with a look at the ultimate bass guitarist, Jack Lawrence. From the raconteurs to the dead weather, discover the unseen glue behind your favorite albums.
Honestly, if you look at the roadmap we are using today, his biographical info and that massive, sprawling discography, that description is completely accurate to the scope of the material. It really captures the mission we have here.
That was exactly the goal. We're taking a fascinating, ubiquitous, but often under-the-radar musician named Little Jack Lawrence, and we're using his career as a lens.
Because by following this one indispensable guy, we can essentially map out the entire interconnected web of 21st century garage rock, country, and alternative music.
Exactly. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. Even if the name Jack Lawrence doesn't immediately ring a bell, I can almost guarantee you have heard his work.
Oh, absolutely.
From James Bond movie soundtracks to backing up country music royalty and anchoring indie rock darlings, he is the secret weapon behind some of the most iconic sonic landscapes of the last 2 decades.
Setting the stage here, I think it is important to establish that this deep dive isn't going to be a simple recitation of a discography.
Right. Nobody wants just a list of dates.
Exactly. Anyone can read release dates. What we are really exploring today is the anatomy of a perfect collaborator. We're dissecting what makes a musician so undeniably valuable that everyone, from garage rock revivalists to absolute country music legends, wants him laying down their rhythmic foundation.
It's an exploration of adaptability in a highly competitive industry.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this with a biographical baseline. Little Jack Lawrence was born on December 18th, 1976. He hails from Covington, Kentucky.
And he's currently based in Nashville, Tennessee.
Right. But looking at his background, there's a detail that immediately caught my eye, and it is highly unusual for a standard rock bassist.
Yeah.
The sheer number of instruments he plays is just extensive.
It's a huge list.
I mean, the information lists him playing bass guitar, auto harp, banjo, piano, vocals, drums, guitar, clarinet, mandolin, accordion, and the double bass.
Yeah.
That is an enormous spectrum of musical disciplines for someone who's primarily known for holding down the low end in heavy rock bands.
It is an enormous spectrum, and it fundamentally changes how we should view his primary role as a bass player.
How so?
Well, think about a musician who understands the intricate mechanics and the breathing physical harmonies of a clarinet or an accordion.
Right, the bellows and all that.
Exactly. Or the rapid-fire percussive finger-picking required for a banjo. They approach a rock rhythm section with a totally different perspective than someone who only plays a 4-string bass.
That makes sense. They aren't just thinking about laying down a heavy, repetitive thump.
They are thinking about melody, about counter rhythm, and about the acoustic space a song needs to breathe.
I see the theory there, but does that actually translate in practice? I mean, a lot of musicians collect instruments and play them casually, but being a jack of all trades can sometimes mean you're a master of none.
Fair point.
Does playing the accordion actually make you a better bass player in a loud, aggressive garage rock band?
It absolutely does, because it provides a wider vocabulary. When you understand how different instruments occupy different frequency bands and emotional spaces, you know exactly when to push your bass line forward to drive the melody, and when to pull back and let the silence do the work.
So it's about context.
Exactly. It explains why he can transition seamlessly across so many different genres without ever sounding out of place. He understands the structural language of the music, not just his specific part in it.
That's a great way to frame it.
And if we bring this back to you, the listener, there is a broader takeaway here. Building a diverse toolkit of skills, even ones that seem completely unrelated at first, like playing the clarinet when your day job is playing bass in a rock band, often makes you the most adaptable and highly sought-after person in your field.
Breadth of knowledge genuinely creates depth of execution.
Perfectly said.
Well, that adaptability becomes incredibly obvious when you look at his primary band timeline. Let's trace how he built his reputation.
Let's do it.
He started making significant waves with the Greenhorns in 1999, releasing their debut album, Gun For You. Over the next few years, they dropped the Greenhorns in 2001 and Dual Mono in 2002.
Right in the thick of the early 2000s garage rock revival.
Exactly. Then, by 2006, he is a foundational member of the Raconteurs, releasing the highly acclaimed Broken Boy Soldiers. And 3 years later, in 2009, he is playing in the Dead Weather, releasing their debut Whorehound.
He is constantly moving, constantly creating new projects.
Yeah, but if you look closely at that timeline, a very specific pattern emerges.
Oh, the deep, recurring partnerships.
Yes, specifically with Jack White and drummer Patrick Keeler. Lawrence and Keeler were the rhythm section for the Greenhorns. They spent years locking in that groove, figuring out how to communicate musically without speaking.
And then that exact same rhythmic foundation, that exact chemistry, was essentially lifted and placed right into the Raconteurs alongside Jack White and Brendan Benson.
It really highlights how much trust dictates musical success. In the studio, you don't always want to hire random, isolated talent.
No, you want to hire the chemistry that already exists.
It makes sense from a production standpoint.
Oh.
Why spend weeks trying to get a bassist and a drummer to understand each other's timing when you can bring in Lawrence and Keeler, who already operate on the same wavelength?
Exactly. Time is money in the studio.
But that level of interconnectedness goes beyond just the studio. There's a detail from his biography that illustrates just how tight-knit this musical community actually is.
The wedding.
The wedding, yes.
Mm-hmm.
On May 22, 2009, Jack Lawrence married photographer Joe McCoffey. But it was a double ceremony shared with Meg White and Jackson Smith.
Wild.
And the entire double wedding was hosted right at Jack White's house in Nashville.
It is an incredible anecdote because it completely shatters the illusion of the modern music industry as a series of cold, corporate, transactional studio sessions.
Yeah, this is a legitimate family.
These are people who are profoundly intertwined, both personally and professionally. When you are taking your wedding vows in your bandmate's backyard alongside another bandmate, that level of intimacy is exactly what you are hearing when you listen to their albums.
You are hearing absolute, unconditional trust.
Which allows musicians to take massive creative risks on tape.
That double wedding detail is amazing. But it does make me wonder, does that level of intimacy ever backfire? It seems like blending your personal life and your entire professional network that tightly could make things incredibly complicated.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, if a band goes on hiatus or there's a creative disagreement, you aren't just arguing with a coworker, you are arguing with the guy who hosted your wedding.
That is a very fair point, and in many bands, that level of insularity absolutely leads to spectacular implosions. We have seen it countless times in rock history.
Oh.
However, in Lawrence's case, it seems to function as an anchor rather than a trap. And we know this because he doesn't just stay in that comfortable, insular backyard. He constantly ventures out into completely different musical territories.
Here's where it gets really interesting. That is the perfect pivot to his session work, which is where his discography gets really fascinating.
The stylistic whiplash is intense.
Oh, completely. In 2004, he played on country legend Loretta Lynn's album, Van Leer Rose. Later, he played on rockabilly queen Wanda Jackson's album, The Party Ain't Over.
Two absolute legends.
Right. And he also stepped in and played auto harp and banjo for the alt-country band Blanche on their 2004 and 2007 records.
Which brings in those acoustic instruments we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. And then, shifting gears entirely, he became a core member of City and Color, playing on multiple albums throughout the 2010s like The Hurry and the Harm, If I Should Go Before You, and A Pill for Loneliness.
We really need to pause and look at the musical distance between those projects. You are going from the heavy, raw, garage punk energy of the Greenhorns to the traditional narrative-driven country of Loretta Lynn.
It's a huge leap.
Van Leer Rose was a critical milestone because it required a rhythm section that could respect traditional country structures while injecting a modern, vital energy.
Yeah.
Then you pivot to City and Color, which is Dallas Green's project. That is deeply acoustic, atmospheric, emotional indie music. It requires a completely different, much more delicate touch on the bass.
And the genre hopping doesn't even stop there. He also moves into cinematic soundscapes.
Oh, the Bond theme.
Yes. He played baritone guitar and bass on the 2008 James Bond Quantum of Solace theme song, Another Way to Die.
Yeah.
For those who might not know, a baritone guitar sits right between a standard guitar and a bass in terms of pitch.
It gives you that low, twangy, ominous rumble.
Absolutely perfect for his 007 soundtrack. And he also served as an uncredited member of Carano's backup band for the Where the Wild Things Are soundtrack in 2009. Credited as Carano and the Kids.
Wow.
How does one musician successfully pivot between a James Bond theme, a children's movie soundtrack, and a Loretta Lynn record?
This kind of prolific variation proves something fundamental about his approach to music. Mastery isn't about having one signature lick or one specific tone and forcing it onto every project you touch.
Right.
True mastery is about serving the song. Lawrence doesn't force a recognizable Jack Lawrence style onto a Wanda Jackson track or a James Bond theme. He molds his playing entirely to what the specific project requires at that exact moment. He is a musical chameleon.
Serving the song is a great way to put it, but that chameleon-like ability extends beyond just the notes he plays. It extends to his actual gear.
Oh, absolutely.
When he does need to carve out a massive, defining sound for a band, he knows exactly how to manipulate his equipment to get it. When he stepped into the Dead Weather, he didn't just bring a standard bass setup.
No, not at all.
The equipment notes for his time in that band highlight his reliance on some very specific pedals, an electro-harmonics-based micro-synth. He uses both the original and the reissue, actually,
It's nice detail.
in a full-tone bass drive.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the inclusion of those specific pedals tells us a huge amount about his role in the Dead Weather.
How so?
Well, a microsynth pedal actually takes the bass guitar's analog signal and manipulates the wave. It can add sub-octaves, or it can turn a smooth sine wave into a harsh, clipping square wave.
So Lawrence wasn't just playing a standard bass line.
Exactly. He was essentially turning his bass into a massive analog synthesizer. He had to do this to compete with the incredibly heavy, abrasive guitar tones that Jack White and Dean Fertitta were producing.
That makes total sense.
And the full-tone bass drive is crucial because many overdrive pedals actually suck the low-end frequencies out of a bass signal.
Oh, I hate when that happens. The mix just goes thin.
Right. The full tone allows the bass to grind and distort while preserving that fundamental, chest-rattling low end.
So by choosing those specific tools, he isn't just standing in the back, quietly playing the root notes of the chord progression. He is actively designing the sonic architecture of the band.
He really is.
He is creating the dirty, swampy, aggressive textures that completely define the Dead Weather's entire identity.
He is a tonal architect. The front person might be the paint and the interior decorations of a house, but the rhythm section is the concrete foundation and the structural steel.
I love that analogy.
You might not always be looking directly at the steel beams, but they are the only reason the house hasn't collapsed. Lawrence's career, spanning from the late 90s all the way up through his more recent work with bands like Glim Spanky and JF the Brotherhood, is a masterclass in the undeniable value of being that structural steel.
It really makes you rethink how we consume music.
Yeah.
We're so culturally conditioned to focus on the flashy front people, the lead singers with the microphone, the lead guitarists taking the massive solos.
Always.
But examining a career like Jack Lawrence's proves that the foundational players, the ones shaping the tone and holding the rhythm, are often the true architects of the art we love. Without their adaptability and their deep understanding of the sonic landscape, the entire structure falls apart.
It is a vital perspective shift. And it leads directly into the call to action I have for everyone listening today.
Let's hear it.
The next time you put on a record that you absolutely love, whether it is a new release or an album you have been listening to for 20 years, take a moment to look at the liner notes or search the credits online.
Great advice.
Look past the name on the album cover and ask yourself, who is the Jack Lawrence of this album? Who is the unseen glue, the adaptable collaborator in the background, holding the entire project together?
Yeah.
Finding those names, tracking their specific discographies, often opens up an entirely new world of musical discovery. You start following the bass players, the session drummers, the engineers, and you find music you never would have encountered otherwise.
You pull on one string, and suddenly you have a whole new playlist of incredible music to explore.
Exactly.
We have covered a lot of ground today, tracing his journey from Covington, Kentucky, to becoming an essential backbone of the alternative rock scene in Nashville, lending his talents to country legends and crafting the heavy sounds of modern rock.
It's quite a resume.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought based on the biographical information we analyzed.
Okay.
The notes clearly list Jack Lawrence as a player of the clarinet and the accordion. But if you look at his major credited album highlights, from the Raconteurs to the Dead Weather to Loretta Lynn, none of them explicitly mention him playing those specific instruments on the mainstream hits.
That is a fascinating omission, and it points to something very interesting about the recording process.
It really makes you wonder about the production choices on those heavy records. How many of those massive, fuzzy walls of sound in modern rock are actually bolstered by traditional acoustic instruments like accordions or clarinets buried deep in the mix just to widen the frequency band?
It happens more than people think.
Right. Are there layers of unconventional instrumentation hiding beneath the heavy fuzz of those mouth pedals, creating a rich, textured sound that we can't quite identify, but that makes the song feel huge?
Oh, I bet there are.
It definitely makes you want to go back and listen to all those familiar records with a totally new set of ears.
It absolutely does. The magic of a truly great recording is almost always found in the layers you can't quite see upon the first listen.
That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the secret architecture of modern rock. Keep your ears open, keep exploring those liner notes, and we'll catch you on the next one.